Because that is something that we all have to responsibly reflect upon. Are we living out the narrative that is presented or that we perceive as the narrative that we need to fulfill? Or are we going to keep reminding ourselves that we are writing a story and we're the star of our own narrative? Welcome back to Aspire Higher with Charles and Yvana Bailey. We have our friend Asante Cleveland. My man is incredible. He is a former NFL athlete. He's played on, I think, 4 major teams, 3 or 4?
49ers.
Yeah, 49ers, Chargers, and then,
Patriots.
What was the third one?
New England.
New England. Okay, you know what I mean? I will try to do my best to remember New England, but it's so cold.
Be a patriot. Thanks. Anyway.
But my man, listen, not only was he a former athlete, but he is a motivator.
Yes,
he is a speaker.
Yep.
He's an advocate, and he's also an author.
Yeah.
And so today's conversation, we're going to talk a lot about his story, but we're going to speak to you because you are writing a story too.
That's right.
So Asante, how are you, my man? How are you feeling?
I'm good. Charles, Yvana, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's great to see you guys again.
I know, reunion.
It's been since,
Last
November?
year, yep.
So,
Yeah, bro.
it's great to see you guys again.
Yeah, you moved. I mean, a lot has changed in your life, man. Talk us through that. What's going on with you right now?
Well, life is lifing.
Of course.
Recently moved up to Sacramento. I was living in Orange County for a while.
Okay.
A big part of my life. My father, he recently passed away, basically days after we moved back up.
Wow.
So it's been an adjustment, but I'm grateful that I'm here to be able to support my mom during this period. But on the positive note, I've had opportunities to speak and get in front of people who are dealing with traumas of their own, help inspire kids so overcome whatever they're dealing with. So just, it's been the full spectrum of life these past few months for sure.
Well, we're really grateful that you took time out to discuss with us, and we're sorry for your loss.
Absolutely.
But proud of you for being the man that you are, stepping up, moving back home to make sure that things are taken care of. Again, that's incredible because you're taking on the role and responsibility of a man in the house. So again, thank you for what you're doing. But I wanted to say something really interesting because you are an author and your book is called Working Through the Dark, correct? I just want to make sure I said that right. And you mentioned it immediately about trauma and things you've gone through. So I love if you wouldn't mind if this conversation would speak to other people and you, again, I mean, I will call you an expert in this field because of your experience and also how you're helping other people work through theirs. But there are other people that are going to be listening and watching this, and they're going to need to know steps and tips on how to overcome, or maybe from your story, things they can gather on how you did it that can help them. Specifically, we speak to business leaders, we speak to athletes, but this really is something that pertains to everyone's life. This is life. So just know that you have a platform to do that, and it's a safe space to do that. So thank you for that. Now, talk to us a little bit about your book. What made you write the book, if you don't mind?
Well, what really encouraged me to write the book was COVID. Like you mentioned, I dealt with trauma growing up, dealing with abuse on my birth mother's side, and it was just something that I didn't really have to think about because I had sports as a distraction for most of my life. And so once I retired in 2018, I noticed that all of these emotions and feelings started to come back up, and without sports to distract me, I just had to sit with them.
Interesting.
And so I wrote just a personal essay of what happened one of the nights as just a way for me to get the story off.
I see.
Because it was just, it had been sitting with me for so long. I just wanted to have it on a piece of paper and then in a way that I could observe. And so that had been sitting for like a year. I had no intention of sharing it. But when COVID happened and we all went through the lockdowns, we all went through this uncertainty, And for a lot of people, that was their first time really having to sit with themselves.
That's
I had
right.
yeah.
We
done
said that.
Right.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had done that a few years earlier when I retired.
Mm.
And so I had kind of already gone through that. But then what really made me feel like I needed to share my story was realizing how many other people were locked down, like how many kids were locked down, how many people were in domestic violence situations and other situations that had no escape. There was also just so much uncertainty around what was happening at that time. And so I wanted to share what I went through in hopes of encouraging people that were going through it, that like, you can do and accomplish whatever you want in life. You can be whoever you want to be.
Right.
The situations you've gone through don't have to define you.
That's
you
right.
can overcome them. And then for people who were now sitting with themselves and reliving some of these past experiences for the first time, to encourage them to really dive deep into what those situations taught you, what you experienced, what helped you through them, and as a way to kind of let go of some of the weight that they may have still been unknowingly carrying for so long.
Definitely.
Very wonderful, man. And we appreciate that, because it's true. During COVID, it made us all reflect.
Yeah.
And I know my wife and I used to always say that. It was like some people weren't really frustrated that they were locked down. The frustration was who they were locked down with.
Come on. Yeah.
And so it's interesting because, as you said, even if it was by yourself,
Right.
some people grew extra frustrated because they had never sat with themselves. And they had a chance to really see that some of the things that they were dealing with were they themselves.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I feel you.
And after you said 2018, why did you start to sit with yourself? Like after you retired as a professional athlete, what made you feel like you need to sit with yourself?
Well, because I didn't know who I was. Like you guys know, when you play sports for so long, that becomes your identity.
Right.
Absolutely.
And once I retired, it was kind of abrupt. And I just was trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Right.
I was jumping into like all these ideas that in the moment sounded like, oh, I should start a photo booth company. Like that sounds like a good idea. But the thing is, like, I didn't know who I was, so everything was basically out of context.
Wow.
And so until I was able to kind of figure out what was important to me, examining what I had gone through, going to therapy.
Right.
It helped me put things into context of like, okay, this is what I feel called to be able to do. This is what makes sense for me.
Right.
Because now, like, looking back, there's like a lot of things that were just out of context to who I was.
Right. That's pretty interesting.
But if you don't know who you are, then
Come on.
everything seems like a good idea.
Yeah, everything sounds like a good idea. Just try this, try that. And there's nothing wrong with trying things, as you said. I mean, at least you had the wherewithal to say, I can still do something.
Yeah.
But the issue was you were defining it off of a misplaced identity. And I think that's a great place to start this
Absolutely.
conversation, because, and I say this every time we do a show, especially with athletes, is because a lot of people tune out because they think this is just an athletic problem.
Right.
But this is a personal problem.
Right.
And it really is a self-leadership problem, a problem that we don't focus on enough. And we don't even recognize that some of us are living, even if we had nothing to do with sports.
Right.
We're doing this in our business titles and the positions that we keep. And when COVID happened, again, we don't want the show to be about COVID, but it's a great way to really make the point clear.
Right.
Everyone had to stop and realize for a moment that they're not what they thought they were.
Yeah.
And what they did was never really who they were.
That's right.
That's
That's
what it
right.
is.
That's right.
Is what you do isn't who you are.
Come
Yes.
And for athletes, because we have done maybe this thing ever since we were little kid, it was who we were.
Yeah,
of course.
It's how we were introduced.
That's right.
To other people's, maybe it's how we introduced ourselves.
Yes.
And realizing that isn't who you are it's a shock for a lot of people. So it was a shock for me. But through time, working through that, you will eventually figure out like who you are
Right.
at your core.
You know what's interesting is when you go into an organization or when you're trying to get hired, you have an interview, right? When you're finished with your collegiate career, you usually have an exit interview with the athletic director, with your coach. I don't know why as professional athletes, we haven't had an exit interview or an exit review of, okay, Here's our position. Here's what we contributed in the sport. Now I have to bridge myself out from this point to understand the real life of who I'm going to become.
Yeah.
There is a real need for a valid assessment, a self-assessment to be made to where you understand you can grieve it too. Like, I'm leaving this behind.
Sure.
It's what I've done ever since I've been a child. It's what I've done ever since in college, whatever the case is. And I am approaching an area of time where I do need some grace. Like, I need some help. I need some support. And I need someone to see me as not what I have, my jersey, not what's on my back, but for who I am. And I think a lot of times when we don't have that self-assessment, business leader or professional athlete, you go into a period of darkness, and also where things become very foggy, things become very painful, and they also feel like you're just not clear on who you want to be, what you want to do. We were speaking to another professional athlete, and she's still becoming, right? So it's a beautiful thing to still be becoming, but it's a horrible thing to be stuck in what you did and feel like you're living out life from that position, because it's not fair.
Did you ever live through that? I mean, I know you're kind of touching on it, but was that a hard place for you in that period of knowing that you had to transition? Like, for instance, it's easy for you to say, I retired. And it actually sounds really good because that's what we say.
Right.
But you, on the other side of that, have to work through the mental and the emotional side of, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that place.
Well, in pro sports, there's like, we all retire,
right?
But there's a difference between.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I was cut.
Yeah.
I wasn't re-signed,
That's right,
or there are people who actually genuinely retired.
Right.
Yeah.
I was not re-signed. I had a knee injury, and then their doctors just wouldn't clear me. So I don't think. I was always actively trying to figure out what I was going to do after football, because I was not under the illusion that I was going to have this prolific 12-year career and all this stuff. So every year when I was in the league, I would do something outside of football, whether it was my rookie year working in the marketing department for the 49ers.
Wow. My
second year doing a 3-week externship with Comcast Sports, because I thought I was going to get into sports broadcasting.
You have a voice. All right.
Or
and that's
singing.
exactly what I thought. I can't sing a lick. I can't sing a lick.
Oh, man. Okay, oh well. He has that beautiful bass voice. All right, go ahead.
I can hold the bass, but I can't do it. But in my mind, that's what was going to be the next path. So once I figured I was retiring, I was doing a little bit of sports radio. And it was during the summer. And the only thing that's happening in the NFL in the summer is people are getting in trouble. And so that's all we were really talking about. And I didn't like it at all. So that's where the real shock was of what I thought was going to be my next step is something that I don't enjoy.
Right.
And so that was the real trial of like, okay, well, really now what am I going to do?
Correct.
I think that's awesome because you made some points that were really incredible that I think we all need to stop and ponder for a minute. One in particular where you were starting the discussion about identity and misplaced identity.
Right.
And you said, this is something that I did all my life. I was known for this. I was recognized for this. And I like that this can be mirrored in business as well.
Right.
Because like I said earlier, positions and things that we do, it becomes our identity. And not just that, we literally allow it to. We wrap ourselves into
that's
it.
True.
We make a conscious decision to let that be our lead.
Right.
So whenever something happens, like in your case, it was an injury. In somebody else's case, it was COVID. It was a furlough. It was a layoff. It was, I'm the best employee in this building and they have to release me. And it's a very hard place. But the thing that I think we need to ponder is there's a reward cycle there. It's the thing in our life that we feel the most appreciated for, because many people don't feel appreciated for who they are.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm appreciated if I say I'm the CEO of this multi-million-dollar brand, or I can say that I'm a 2-time NFL Pro Bowler and I have 5 rings, right? When still none of those things are you.
Right. That's right.
And I think that that's a great place to remind all of us, anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching, we have to do what Yvana said. The first step is the self-assessment where we are.
Right.
You had the wisdom to say, you had foreknowledge to say, I'm not going to have this 12-year the illustrious, maybe I can be the 1% of the 1%
Man, point
that's
five.
here for a decade
Right.
and still doing this. You are already exploring your gifts, your talents, and other abilities
That's right.
because you had foresight. And I think that's the second point I want to make sure I highlight is because most of the time it's fear that's stopping us from having the foresight.
That's right.
I don't want to do the self-assessment, Coach Yvana. I don't want to do the self-assessment, Asante, because if I look at it, I have to face the harsh reality that this is going to end. I don't want this to end because this is how people know me, and this is where I get my hugs, and this is where I get my attention, and this is how I got my 100,000, plus followers.
Right.
This is me.
Right.
And it never was.
It never was. Come on.
So for you, you're one of the brilliant ones.
Yeah.
Because you didn't get lost in that identity. Can I ask you a question? Were there moments when you were in the NFL career, because I'm sure there were, you can talk about, where you were confused on or because you owned that identity of the NFL athlete that you almost lost yourself in it?
I don't think I ever, actually.
He said, whoa,
There
no,
was
let's talk about it.
There was, I'd say probably when I was in San Diego, my third year in the league, I was so unsure of myself that I was kind of falling into the traps of like, oh, I want to buy some jewelry now. And it wasn't because I felt this was so important that I needed to have this. It was just my personal position, like honestly, like where I was on the team depth chart. I noticed that my self-worth fluctuated based on where I was on the depth chart. And in San Diego, my third year, I was basically in no man's land. I was on the active roster, but not high enough. I wasn't a starter, so not high enough to be like taking like full game reps. For the most of the time, I wasn't suiting up for games, but I was in the NFL.
Right.
And so because I was so unsure of that, I felt I had to express it externally because I definitely wasn't feeling it internally.
Of course. There are layers.
There's so many incredibly powerful layers there
that people don't get. They think, oh, you made it. You made it to the NFL. What could you be disappointed about? What could you be, ungrateful for? And you're like, but you have no idea the onion of the league, the system of the league, right? And it's interesting how you found your value externally as opposed to fulfillment internally.
Yeah.
And how soon after that you bought that jewelry that you actually felt appreciated, worth something?
I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think that's the interesting thing. We all feel like when we look at the externals that we'll feel the validation we're seeking and it's empty.
And why did you choose an outward adornment to fulfill that void?
Because I wanted to look the part, even though I wasn't feeling like I was the part. Like, well, I'm in the NFL, so I have to have like a nice chain, or I have to wear expensive clothes.
Come on.
Because I have to look the part, because I don't have the content to prove that I'm in the NFL. I'm not like in the game every week. I'm not playing. So it's like, where can I get that sense of
validation
self?
And
Validation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you are, like many of us, accepting the narrative that was placed in your perception. You never had to do any of that. You said, I thought I had to.
Right.
And we always write the joke. I don't know if you've seen the movie Coming to America. And if you've seen it, of course, you remember the king walks in and basically the lady gets confused and says, well, he's the prince. And then he's like, who told you that? Right? That was the funny point, because no one told you that you had to do that. But somewhere there was a narrative that was adopted.
That's right.
That you were willing to say, I would trade who I am authentically.
Right.
So that I can present the narrative that I believe, or I've been told everyone else needs to see.
Culturally too.
As opposed to just being authentically me, presenting that and leaving them with the weight and them having to deal with it.
Who you are, exactly.
With who you actually are.
Come on.
I'm saying this because you're speaking to people right now, Asante. We hadn't even gotten in 10 minutes into the show. Because that is something that we all have to responsibly reflect upon.
Yeah.
Are we living out the narrative that is presented, or that we perceive as the narrative that we need to fulfill? Or are we going to keep reminding ourselves that we are writing a story and we're the star of our own narrative?
Yeah.
Where did you come to that realization that you had the control to start and write your own narrative? And there's a follow-up question, but I want you to think and say whatever comes to mind at that point.
Oh, I'd say probably around like 2020 when everything kind of stopped and I was no longer really, I was like desperately trying to figure out what I was going to do. And with that comes like making rash decisions or just like not really like taking time to like think things out. So once like everything just stopped again and I was able to like just start writing, that was when I realized like, okay, I want to be someone who helps other people because I'm best suited to serve people who have gone through similar struggles as I have.
There you go.
So that's where I didn't feel the need to like, I had to present as if I was something I wasn't. And not something that I wasn't,
I understand
but
what you're
something
saying.
that wasn't authentic to like
who you are,
my values.
Right.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that helped. Just that stillness again. It was almost like retirement part 2 of like, all right, let's do this again.
Right. Why do you think you were desperate?
Because I felt like I had to find something immediately. I didn't want to be someone who didn't know what they were going to do, because whenever someone asked you like, oh, hey, you're not playing football anymore, like, what are you up to now?
Doing?
Right.
You need to have an answer.
Yeah.
And
Or do you?
that was honestly, that was the
Come
most anxiety driven like question that I knew was coming. And so I always felt good when I could say like, oh, I'm doing this thing.
Right.
So when someone asked me like, say, oh, I'm doing this thing,
Right.
I'm consulting for this company, I'm doing this, I'm
Right.
doing that. But and really like, I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? You know, this is so beautiful because your authenticity, bro, is just beaming right now. But you're really giving some incredible insight that all of us, and I always include myself because I'm learning too, you're speaking from the perspective of it's fear, right? Because we're afraid of what other people are going to think.
Of course.
And those are some of the most dangerous words. What are other people going to think? And what are they going to say, right? Those things kill dreams and kill people, honestly, more than weapons of mass destruction, if you really understand it, because consciously you're afraid of the perception of other people. That's what you really were saying about, I felt like I needed to do this. I needed to portray this. I needed to show this. I needed to be able to say, oh, I got this high power position now. I'm done with NFL, or I'm starting all these businesses. But it's enough for you to say, I've done this up to this point. I'm taking time, watch this now, to evaluate where I am and truly giving myself a beat, giving myself a minute, grace, giving myself a minute, some time to see what I really want to do. Guess why? Because I have the privilege and I also have the honor to do that because I've earned it.
Come on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we undervalue not just the work we've already put in, but the position we have. Because for one person, I said this during that whole pandemic. I said it over and over. We wrote it in our book, and we'll talk more about your book as well. But there were people who spent time during that lockdown who lost themselves, and they were really looking to connect with the thing that they did. And there are other people who found themselves because they started investing who they were, because it was the one chance in all of the world where you could stop and no one else can do it. No one can do anything. And you could discover yourself. Okay, I still have a passion to sing. You had 2 years to practice singing. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to do art all this time. You got 2 years now to practice art.
Grace periods.
So what I'm saying, I know I said a lot, but I'm saying this to say, it's the perceptions we have of other people's opinions of who we are that we've got to shed.
Absolutely.
And I'm proud of you because you went through the process, but because of your mindset, it didn't seem like it took too long.
No.
And the last thing you said is you wanted to help people. You discovered you wanted to help people. You, my friend, already had a story, already had a narrative.
That's right.
You didn't need anyone else's. So the downtime for you allowed you to see that you were already carrying worth. And you had a place to give from.
That's right. And earlier when I asked him about, you know, that feeling of desperation and wanting to have that answer prepared, I would even, this thought just hit me that your moment of desperation could have been because others were waiting for you to arrive authentically. If you just needed a break from the league, that's what you needed, and that's what you're working on, a break. Then even with that, I was thinking about how when you're fulfilling a real need in people's lives, you're going to feel this empty brewing. I could see it. It's like one part is empty because you're trying to fulfill who you are and who you are to become. There's another part where it's like bubbling because people are waiting on you to arrive. They're not waiting on you to flex on your position. They're not waiting on you to flex
Right.
on your status or your money. They're waiting on you with your credibility to say, this is how I'm going to help you. This is my story. This is what I've been through. From the athletic to the child to the misplaced identity in athletics. This is who I am and this is what I can offer. And it's interesting because every time you probably felt that way, unknowingly, you were writing. And in those stories and in those chapters, you published a book. You published a book in the meantime.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes, from your own story. So we understand now that those pressures led you to write that book. But now having written it, has it given you a higher sense of purpose and value? Do you feel like you have higher aspirations now because of what you're doing outside of sport?
I think it's shown that what I've experienced and my perspective can be helpful to other people, whether it's other athletes, people who've experienced trauma. Like I know that because I've gone through it, I know that I have like done the personal work that like. One of the best questions I got asked recently was, I was just speaking out in Iowa, and this high school kid asked like what I would encourage him to do to like work through trauma. And I got like excited because like I have a bunch of information because like I've experienced, I remember going through it. So knowing that I can help other people is exciting to me. It's encouraging. It like fills me up, and it's selfless. It's not based off like what I was searching for before was like I need to do something that will make me look big to other people.
Of course.
Man,
And
you're speaking
this
so
is
good.
something that is going to now I'm focused on like what can I do to help other people
Come on.
that are in need.
That's a major shift.
That's incredible.
That's a major shift.
But that's the point.
Right.
I think it's so cool what you just said, man. I told you, like, I am so glad to be in your circle. We're both so glad because your life has so much meaning and it adds so much value. It's adding value right now.
Absolutely.
And what you just said is so crazy because even as a professional athlete, or if someone's listening, they're a business leader or aspiring to be a business leader or whatever, okay, right? Someone who leads a school, it doesn't really make a difference. Leadership in general. Many times we want to ascend so high, or we end up feeling like we're ascending so high that people can't touch us. They can't relate to us.
Of course.
They can't connect to us.
Of course.
And we see it all over TV. We see, leaders who are like higher than anybody else in the world. But at the core of us, when all that fades or something just happens, to remove us from our identity, that facade. I mean, I don't want to just say everybody's pretending, but there's a point I'm making here. We all want to then be touchable. We all want to be able to be we spend so much of our time trying to get away from being you know how some people pride themselves that they can't be reached? You got to go through 10 people to get through them and all that. But then there's that person that's just sad because they feel good feeling like they're on top. But then if or when that just dissipates, all they want is to be able to be relevant. They want somebody to respect what they have to say. They want to feel valued,
That's right.
but at the heart level. And bro, you are working that. You found it. Your aspirations have ascended, even though if someone else were to look at it, they think, well, it's not as high as the NFL. Oh, they missed it.
That's right.
Because you're changing hearts. You're changing minds. You're changing culture. You're changing kids' futures. And you're also challenging adults because you are someone who is at the pinnacle. And instead of running from your pain, you let your pain fuel your purpose.
Come on.
Yeah. We all crave that connection. And just feeling like we're not alone. And so if what we've all experienced, the good, the bad, the ugly, someone else has gone through that as well. So
Right.
by sharing your story, you then create that connection to others.
That's right.
And then make them want to connect with you because you identify with the same thing that they identify with. You guys have experienced the same thing. So that has been just so rewarding, just sharing what I've gone through, and then just realizing how many other people that I knew in my own circle had dealt with the similar situations.
Wow.
But you would never know until you have the courage to share.
That's right. And did you always have that confidence as you were writing? Was it brute? No. Talk about it.
No. I have a co-author, Jordan, who helped me tremendously. He works with kids. He works with kids in like really tough home life situations. And I dealt with I don't know if it was, let's say it's imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Right.
Am I the right person to share this story? Like, is this story that important? But what really helped was we wrote the book in a way where it's not about me. It's not really a woe is me story.
Talk about it.
What I went through was in there, but we've sectioned it off to where every other chapter is a reflection in a way for the reader to examine their own personal experience, their own situations, so that it's more of a tool as opposed to like, this is what I went through, everybody should feel bad for me. And like, that's not what I wanted at all.
Correct.
And so that was the encouragement of like, once it was all said and done, of just finally being like, all right, it's good to go. It's not, I definitely went back and forth about like, I don't know if I really want to put this out, but I had encouragement from another friend, Tiana, who she had published a story speaking about her own personal traumas.
Yes. Great friend of
know
ours.
Tiana.
We really know T.
Our girl.
That's our
Yeah.
girl,
Man, you
man.
talk
So
about somebody
that
that's been
was
through.
so
Yeah.
encouraging.
Right.
Come on.
Seeing someone else who had done it in another way, that gave me a lot of,
And not just that, but like you both. I mean, you're
Yes.
both decorated athletes. You're talking
Absolutely.
about, in her case, one of the most decorated athletes
All
in the
time.
history of sport.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you didn't know, and no one would know that she was going
No.
through that. But that's the point that you just made that I want to make for you. You said something right at the beginning of your thought there, and you were like, I didn't know until I started speaking about it
Right.
that other people had gone through or
It's always
dealing
like
with
that.
it or carrying that. But my point is that the healing in many of these cases came, or if at the very least, the opportunity to address it came because of you.
Right.
Remember where you said, I wasn't sure if I'm the person that should share the story?
Right.
And I'm saying this to our listeners, our viewers, because there's so many people who feel like, I don't know if, my struggle is powerful enough, or why am I telling it when you got this guy who is in the NFL and you got a Tiana who's a multi-gold Olympian.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have that platform. Here's the reality. They don't have yours. There are people that will never hear the people we're mentioning. Even this show, you happen to hear it, but the people you know aren't.
Yeah.
We would like them to if you'd share it, but sincerely, your story matters. And you, what you've been through is intentionally designed to help others overcome so that they can set their mind and aspirations higher.
That's right.
And believe that who they are is special and important enough to impact their world, even if it's just the world of one person.
That's right. And when we were all together last November and speaking at Athletes' Voices and wonderful, wonderful time, it was interesting because there was a moment where we were speaking and it was kind of like a poll in the audience. Like, how many of you know that you need to be speaking more? Because this was supposed to amplify your voice. And this was a time where all of us leaders and speakers, we came together to encourage one another, but also to share our own stories.
Sure.
And it's interesting because it was something as small as like, start a book. How many of you know that you've been needing to get your story out there, but have been masking behind fear? Like, how many of you here? And then there was another moment where it said, okay, well, even if you don't write the book, what about how many of you need to start a podcast? And the thing about starting is it doesn't matter what avenue you choose. It doesn't matter if you do a book, a podcast, ebook. It doesn't matter any of that. What matters is the moment that you choose to say, I will not let fear grip me. I'm going to try. I'm going to muster up confidence and courage. And I'm going to release little by little what I feel is for somebody. Because your story is for a lot of people. Your story is for a lot of people.
Sure.
My story is for a lot of people. And when you think about when you do it for someone else, it takes away that pressure,
Yes,
man. It takes
that's
away
right.
that like
That's right.
needing to perform, needing to make sure the writing is perfect, needing to make sure it's published the right way. We have excellence as athletes, so we want it done in our way, but doing it at all, that's the championship moment. That's the Super Bowl. That's
Yes, it is.
that's the Olympics, man. Just being able to say, yeah, we actually wrote a book. And you know what? That book, it can go forever.
Yeah, sure.
That's the craziest part.
Sure.
Us running on a track, competing on the field, it ends.
Yeah.
But your story will always live on. And we encourage our audience to understand that whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, start it.
You just got to start.
Start it because it's for someone. Trust me, it's for someone.
And tell us real quick, as we kind of wind down the thoughts of the show, what is something you would tell our audience if someone is listening and they're looking at you and they're thinking, okay, we got the message. Pinnacle of success, had to leave the NFL, tried to find who he was, found his purpose, started to release a story. What are the steps, if there are any, that you can recommend for anyone to come to the point where they can address their trauma and also how they can overcome it?
Talk about it. That's the first step. You have to have the courage to first address it yourself.
Yeah.
For me, I started going to therapy, which helped me begin having the conversations with someone outside of myself. And through that, I realized that as I was talking to this person, that I was saying a lot of these thoughts for the first time out loud.
Right.
And after you say it out loud, you now have an opportunity to observe these things that have been in your head. And you can now form a new opinion, like, do you want this still to be true for you? Is this still true for you?
Right.
And so the first step is like, you have to be able to start talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I think of it as like, as an athlete, working out.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I was first like a freshman in high school, lifting 135 on bench press, that was a big deal.
Oh,
But,
wow.
like,
I do 135 each arm.
well, as a freshman in high school,
Oh
I
my.
was hyped, but I needed a spotter to lift it.
His story, not your story. Keep going.
But like, so when I first started, I needed a spotter to lift it.
Of course.
And now that's my warm-up set. If I'm going to the gym, I'm about to bench, like 135 is a warm-up set. I don't even have to think about it anymore.
Right.
And it's the same with dealing with your own personal traumas. Like you may need a spotter in the
Yeah.
beginning. You may need
Come
someone
on
to
now.
help
That's a
you.
good
Mr.
analogy.
Wisdom?
I like that.
But over time, it gets lighter and lighter. Like the weight is still the
Woo, the
weight.
burden gets lighter.
It never changes,
Yeah.
but you just get stronger. And so 3-4 years ago, there was no way I would ever be able to just have conversations with people about being abused as a child.
Yeah.
But as I've talked through it, worked through it more, explored it deeper, it's like I wrote a book. I'm on stage talking about it. So it just starts with just having the courage to address it.
That's
you need
right.
to be able
That's
to
right.
talk about it, and that will get the ball rolling for you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it's so I'm so proud of
Yeah,
your
very
courage
proud.
and your confidence in this and how fast you evolved. You just said 3 years ago, like
Yeah.
not 30.
Yeah.
This is very
Yeah.
recent.
This is a recent
And
journey.
so a lot of people feel like, well, I'm this age
Yeah, I'm
or at this
past
time
it,
of life,
right.
I'm past it. I can't talk
Nope.
about it anymore. And it's like, you're alive. Just open
Yeah.
your mouth or start writing or go seek therapy or healing, whatever you do. And it's interesting because I wouldn't even say you, as a whole, a lot of people don't understand the seat and the respect of pain and trauma being a platform. Like they don't even see the association of it. They
Yeah.
just see the guilt, the shame, the sorrow, the
Yes.
hurt, the pain it's brought, But when you start doing the work and really step outside of yourself, as intrinsically as you were, you still stepped outside of yourself to look back at a situation and then also progress through that. And then that progression puts you on platforms.
And that's the bottom line.
That is purpose.
We are
Like, that's
literally
huge.
prepared, as we write in our book. We spell it a separate way: PRE-PAIRED. You're
Mm.
prepared
Yeah.
for the platform that was made for you.
Yeah.
And most people forget that the connection is their pain.
Come on.
We
Every
may not
time.
want it to be that way.
Every time.
But the reality of it is that is the most empowering thing about you, because it is the most challenging thing for you to overcome.
That's right.
It is your hero's journey.
Come on.
When you are able to overcome that dragon or slay the
Mhm.
dragon, as James Leith said in
Mhm.
a past episode, the reality
Yeah.
of it is you'll find that pot of gold or the princess or the reward or the eternal legacy.
That's right.
Is on the other side of that. And man, I'm telling you,
Mhm.
I'm proud of the fact that you found that.
That's right.
Last remarks, Coach?
Yes. And even when Asante first spoke, when we were at where we were, it was, first of all, his voice. Let's
Yeah,
be
of
real
course.
about it.
Yeah, everybody
Okay.
shut up
What a
when he opened
voice.
his mouth.
I was like, whoa.
Wow.
But with that, the moment you start adding credibility to a story and an emotional pull, you got me all day.
Of course.
Because a lot of people get on platforms and
Yep.
as speakers.
It's all hype,
and-
inspiration, all
or
the
not
time.
even that,
Okay,
but
my
they-
apologies.
they-
I spoke too soon. Oh,
It's
my
okay.
bad. Okay.
But they'll start spitting out their script. It will sound like black and white text as they
Right.
speak, but the moment you start talking from your heart about a situation that you've been through, a situation that you've overcome, a situation that you are going to help me understand how to overcome, you have me.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people don't understand that because they think, well, how am I going to be perfect in speaking? How
not
am I going to
about
get on
that.
that platform? Speak from your heart.
Just present
Speak
yourself.
from your heart. Present who you are,
That's
what
right.
you've been through, how you've overcome that, and how you're still growing.
Yeah.
Because we're not perfect.
That's
We're
right.
still growing. We're still speaking. We're still trying to go from pain into purpose and then on those platforms maximize that.
Mm.
So Asante, I
Yo,
congratulate you for doing the
man.
work. The work is the hardest part, and the fruit
Yeah.
of your labor is paying off. So we
Absolutely.
appreciate
And you're
you
just at the
so
beginning,
much.
man. You're at the beginning. Because you think about it, 5-10 years from now, when you start looking at the platforms you're on and you start to look back at your life, you're going to be blown away that it's bigger than what you did on the field. And your life was always bigger than what you did on the field.
Yeah.
So, man, thank you for spending time with us. We hope our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this. If you want to find Asante, we'll ask him right now. Asante, where can people find you? Website or links?
You can find me on Instagram at Asante Cleveland. My website is asantecleveland.com. If you want to buy my book, it's on Amazon called Working Through the Dark. And I just want to thank you guys for having me on your platform. It's been great, the support that you guys have both given me through these past few months.
You got it, bro.
I genuinely appreciate it.
Oh, man, we appreciate you,
appreciate
man.
you.
We love you and we're proud of you. Well, guys, you heard the incredible voice. Maybe one day it'll be a legendary voiceover.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll
Allstate.
even better than
why I
that.
thought about
I don't
Allstate.
know, 'cause- oh gosh.
It sounded similar.
But it's better though. I'm not hating. Listen,
not.
I'm grateful for anybody
I-
getting any spot.
I got to meet him. At a
Hey,
game
did you
once.
really? That's crazy,
He's
man.
a legend.
Anyway, well, sincerely, man, we'll hopefully hear your voice on something awesome. Maybe the Lion
Yes.
King third reboot, something like that.
Yes.
That would be a great one. But nonetheless, Disney, hopefully they're listening. We'll probably see if we can push that. But thank you so much for your time. Please, if you hadn't already done it, like, subscribe.
Share
Please,
it.
We need the subscriptions. We
Come
know
on.
that you're watching. We see the numbers. Just go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified, and also so that we can know we got your vote of support and
That's
confidence, because it helps us grow. And remember, you're also giving us courage and confidence when we see that you're actually watching and subscribing. So thank you for your time. Until next one, we will talk to you then.